Welcome to the Mantic Universe podcast, and this time it's going to be epic. We are launching our second Epic Warpath episode, and this time with my dear friend Claudio. Hello.
Hi, Matthias. Hi, everyone listening.
And this is your host, Matthias, again. And we haven't had a lot of Epic Warpath in the last months or weeks, mainly because we were occupied with the 4th edition Kings of War release, which came surprisingly also this year, which at least for me wasn't expected to have two major games launched by Mantic in 1 year, and therefore a little bit of lack of Warpath and Epic coverage in from our side. But we want to bake up and get things going again, and so you have us two here again for talking, and we both have received all of our Kickstarter items, all of our armies. And as my information goes, also the last second wave shippings are out. So every one of you out there should have received the Kickstarter items the time this episode goes live and going full into Epic. So, Claudio, what have you ordered and what have you already started with?
So I've ordered quite a bit because I haven't everything isn't for me. So I've ordered a few things for friends of mine. For me, I've ordered the GCPS and the Nameless. And then again, I've ordered Fort Brothers and Enforcers for two friends of mine who play those factions in Dead Zone 2. So it was the easiest way to get them into the game and get some opponents hyped up for it. And I've also ordered a ton of dice, faction dice. Again, only the GCPS for me, every other faction for my gaming buddies. So I've ordered the bigger pledge with 4 armies or 4 factions and all the STLs because I have a resin printer. So for me, it was a no-brainer. And I've already built nearly everything for my GCPS. Only a few reinforcements are left, which I don't plan to use in my first games, either because I've already printed some parts before I got my Kickstarter, or because they are duplicates that just didn't fit in my first list options.
So do you also got the Resin enforcements or
Yes, I've got the for all 4 armies. I've looked at the plastic sprues and the resin upgrades or the resin reinforcements, and I've got 4 super heavies, 2 for me, and so 2 for the GCPS. Nothing for the Nameless because I will print them if I'm happy with my GCPS. This Nameless will be my second project then, and I've got 1 of the super heavies for the other 2 factions.
Yeah, how is the resin quality of the reinforcements? Because it's rather small models. Is it tricky to build or any problems with them?
I think the super heavies are a bit hit or miss, maybe. So there are a few parts where I was trying to get the parts fitting along, especially with the many parts of the big walker, the GCPS walker. At the torso, I had problems to align them properly and had a bit of hobby time there. And I think on the mules, the Onager mules, the artillery mules, the tires are a bit warped, so they aren't completely round. But I don't think once they are painted and built, it won't be a big thing. So
I mean, this is the early adapter problems with resin models. I've seen this in the past with Mantic. Is how to say. From what I have seen in the resin casting and the models I received, they try to improve their production over time and change things a lot. So if things are broken too often or warped too often and things like that, they adjust their casting process and how they align the models or cut them off. So this should be improved the longer the game stays in. And I think with that, while we have gotten with the Kickstarter item, obviously the very first castings and trials things. So this is like the
and especially in such high numbers that they had to produce. So I think that's also a factor. But other than that, the detail is really, really crisp. They are looking great. So that's not really a problem at all. And if I think back at like the first Armada releases, where there were many problems because they had to produce so many ships and they didn't really align or break. So I didn't have anything broken. That's really, really good. Only a few alignment things, but overall the quality is really nice. I mean, both of plastics and reinforcements for that scale, they are really crisp.
Yeah. I mean, I just only have ordered the drop ship from the Forge Fathers and the Techno Nest from the Veer-myn models, and they both were okay in their resin quality. Also for that scale of a super heavy models, the usual problems with the just if someone was on the micro, the cat walked off, so it should be fine. No, the models themselves were okay. Like from the first casting, the dropship had some warp parts that I needed to straighten up in hot water to build them, but overall things were okay. And looking forward, so people who print them should have a much easier going with the resin models. And I'm looking forward, or at least I'm curious and want to try out what they are going to do with the print on demand service later on. And if this one works, and what items are available for Epic in this regard. So I got the Forge Fathers for me and the Veer-myn for my son. The plastic quality is very good from the items I got. What is a positive surprise is they really tried to get all the models on a single casting pin that is on the base, as far as it goes.
Yes.
So you can really no problems with cutting off small parts in that regard that are destroying the details, and you also can paint them on the frame. This is very a good thing. With only, I think, the Forge Father Commander is the only model I have seen so far that has a second casting pin on, because they had this miscast with the hammer, which they needed to change for the full cast. So this works very well. And I've seen people doing both actually on the internet, with some painting the frames and clip the models out afterwards, while others have built all the models and armies and troops first before they painted them. Which one did you prefer?
So I went for me. I thought for me, I will be going the easier route, and it worked out. I cut them out of the sprue and glued them on their bases, glued everything together in regards of tanks and so on. So I built them completely, primed them, and then just went and painted them on their bases. And it was no problem at all. The gaps between the models are big enough that I can reach everywhere I wanted to. I don't have any black spaces left where, there would be shadow or something like that. I didn't need to do some tricks there. But for me, it was no problem at all. And I like to do it that way, because then I have the models already there. I don't have to build them afterwards. And I really want to get those things painted, because that scale for me was something where I said, okay, I want to paint quicker, easier jobs, and make a few maybe highlights. I've painted them green, my GCPS green. So like the usual army green, because I didn't do that on for Firefight or Dead Zone, but I thought on that scale it would look nice and have like a few brighter green accents that really pop on that scale, with a few like black boots and those things. So I didn't really mind. I don't do like freehand or like 3 layers of edge highlighting on those. I'm dry brushing or even just one edge highlight on the shoulders, and that's it. And the rest is speed paint for me.
So no unit markings on the shoulders.
No, no, little like numbers and things. I mean, I'm still thinking about, because I have only painted the resins for now that I printed before I got my Kickstarter, and I'm thinking about how do I don't want to paint different base rims or so on for those units, so I really have to think about some markings, maybe different colors on one shoulder or something like that to differentiate them. And I think also to show Marines and veterans, they have different weapons and poses, but on that scale it's not as intuitive. So I've marked them with some red stripes on the shoulders to show their veterancy. But yeah, the problem is if I have 3 units of those veterans in that scale, what will I do? I'm not sure yet. I haven't found a solution yet, but I haven't painted more than one unit each. So
I mean, different weapon colors would be an option, different helmets. I'm not sure if it's even, how to say this, could be the better opportunity to not pay unit markings at all, but use clips on the bases or flexible markings there. So to have be more flexible in future with the models, so that you can use like use some green. There are like those FDM printed clips that you can put the bases in, so that the bases have different color markings. And so you could get the troop markings on there and then use the models for veterans or troops and anything like in future to be more flexible in that regard. It's an option out there. Also, we don't know any conversions yet, or just build everything as it should be.
Actually, I've done a few conversions, not many, and not really big ones. Haha, pun intended. But I've started with printing them a few units or even striders mirrored, because I knew I would be getting the resin reinforcements. So I thought, okay, I could mirror a few striders to have more variety. Mirrored also some veterans and mix and match them to get more than 4 poses out of it, because it really makes a difference if they are holding like the weapon up one hand, and if it's the other hand, it's a different look. And I don't care if it's then a left-handed rifle or not. I mean, that exists too, so I'm not worried about that. So
there are left-handed people out there, so it should be
crazy. But I think it's a really, really easy thing to do, and also a strength of 3D printing. It didn't do any with meddling with programs to change the STLs, because that's not something I want to do, to be honest. I know it's not that hard, but at this point, I'm not interested in that. But I've built, or I printed a major, and the major, you usually have to use one of the plastic secondary command units to put on the base. And I've printed a ranger, a thermal ranger, and removed the thermal mine that he's holding like in the hand, like in the air. And I've printed a second major, cut off the energy gauntlet, and put it on the hand of the ranger instead of the mine. So it looks like a bit of like a ranger lieutenant as a secondary who is like a bodyguard for the major.
That's actually really cool.
I like the look, so I don't have to use the comms technician from the plastic sprue, and I didn't have the plastic sprue at the time, and I thought, well, if I want a second major, the second major will have a normal supporting unit.
Mixing the model a little bit up is also an easy possibility to get more variation into, because like you have your commanders on the sprue, possibly much more commanders than you need on the plastics, and you can make use one as a troop upgrade to make your unit or make a unit leader in a troop or veteran base, things like that to get for different units, or
Yeah.
swap the second model out with things like that. So you can get the variation in there to have, if you have 2 or 3 commander bases, to make each command base look differently, just by swapping the models around a little bit. I've also seen people using thin wires to make flag bowls and things like that to add to this.
Mm.
It's a good thing. And also already seen some only putting 3 models instead of 4 on the infantry troop bases and adding some debris and things like that to make this a more dynamic or damaged cityscape
I mean,
look.
there are
So
a few factions where the models are a bit bigger. I mean,
mm,
looking at the nameless Ferromites, they are really bulky. So I think
yeah,
having 3 on there might even be better looking than 4. I will have to test that out when I'm building them. I think with the GCPS, they aren't as impressive. So from a, it's only a
yeah.
puny human. So having 4 on there works quite well. I think, I mean, you could maybe even add more than 4 if you really want that. I think I've seen some
Yeah,
pictures
I
online.
mean, especially for Blake zombies or something like that,
That could be
adding
fun.
a 5th or a
Yeah.
6th model would be nice to really make on that horde or mass look. So yeah, there's
I
a
mean, especially
possibility.
with a 3D printer, because
Yeah,
you can just print a few extra models you need, and you don't have to, get an extra sprue or an extra box, or you use a unit because you've taken many from the other unit onto that base, then mirror them, and you can have 6 zombies. I mean, it's harder to paint, so you would have to paint them individually, and you have to paint more for the
yeah.
same
But I
base.
mean,
It's a hobby
it's
project.
zombies without that many details. You would
Yeah,
give them a light shade and things. It shouldn't be that.
a,
So
a little bit
painting
of
things
blood.
up is, yeah, painting them up isn't how to say, it shouldn't be that hard, because it's what I've seen, the usual the speed painting side of things works very well. Having your inks, washes, contrast paints, speed paints, things like that works really nice on the models. They have, especially the infantry has enough details on there to give this a good look. um the larger models especially the tanks, would guess need some other techniques, edge highlighting a little bit on them to look better out. Have you tried any fancy techniques on the vehicles like OSL or
Noth-
things like that? Just no.
nothing fancy really. I went the tanks, mules, or vehicles were really quick. That was awesome. So I mean, the infantry, you have little details. My idea is I'm not a fast painter, and I don't paint as much as I could. So with the first batch, I really wanted to try out the minimum work and maximum achievement, where
Yeah.
I just dry brush a bit, or like, go do my edge highlighting by just using a brush on the edges. Nothing freehand or fancy there, and it works out. Or even just painting some panels a bit in a brighter green, that lets them stand out a bit more and makes a good enough effect for what
Mm,
I'm trying to achieve there. But I've seen some pictures where people really really take their time and can achieve great things because the detail is there. But that's also the thing when I say the detail is so amazing, I can get away with like the minimum effort because the model itself lends itself to use it, because it's deep enough, the undercuts and so on that are there. They are good enough for that, in my opinion.
yeah, and also simple paint schemes work better with the smaller models, because we are not painting models, we are painting armies in that regard. So it is really something that is standing out.
True.
High contrast or complementary colors and things like that work really well to have standing out details and things like that. So this is a great. So yeah, well, quite happy with how everything turned out in that regard. And it's also, I mean, I have focused more on the terrain side of things. I've got the XL terrain box. It's, how to say, rather flexible from the building point. So it's really need to plan ahead and what you're doing, because there are building instructions out there, but it's really you get a lot just of blades and tiles that you need to figure out how to work together and how you like them. There's not just you can build a lot of things and dense terrain, and then the table is almost empty because you have used up everything in that one building. On the other side, it's also, if you put a little bit of conversion on kit bashing in there, you can get a lot more out of the sets. It's like what I've seen. Already someone posted a video about how to use the frames as additional parts. Like if you use one tile or one roof tile, wall tile, break it apart, makes them two halves or two ringed ones, use the frame pieces to put them in between as like this Stahlträger.
Iron beams.
Yeah.
Steel beams. Steel beams.
Steel beams, yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah, but this works. So you can expand the terrain simply with what is there with the frames and use them, especially when you make a ruin cityscape already, or want to have some half buildings in there. But also as reinforcement, so you don't need to build a full structure. If everything inside is hollow, you can use the frame as reinforcement, just to make the models more stable without using up all the tiles you have there. So this works quite well in there. So there's a lot of possibility to get lost in building that terrain just by exploring all the possibilities, but it's also making a good use of table space. And I have also seen...
we didn't plan that, but it worked out perfectly because I haven't touched this Bruce yet. So I have painted and built a few units, and you have only built a few buildings. So I mean, if it would have been planned, it would have been perfect. But you know,
we definitely planned that way. So
yeah,
it's long term. So sorry,
we'll
so
edit
guys,
that out.
It's big secret. This is no. So I'm really on the walkways. So also what I've seen is some of the dead zone terrain fits well into it. Like we have those the half-sized walkways that in dead zone.
Mm-hmm.
So they only make those half cube size, that is 1.5-inch narrow with things like that. So we can use this one as like high up streets to go between the building. The tank bases fit very well on that one with the 25 or 30 mil bases. So this works out quite well. And so you can use, if one of us has already some good deaths on the rain, you can use that in Epic Warpath as well. It blends really good in there, especially those walkways. Some of the larger buildings makes a good, how to say, underground. If you want to have different levels of cityscape, you can have one of your dead zone buildings as a larger bottom building, and then put the small buildings on top there, so you get some height in there on your table if you want to. So this works out quite well. I mean, we have also a nice picture here from Mantic Games that is on the website for the terrain. Like they have put the 28 mil craters in there as a debris and everything else. So those buildings they have a lot of possibilities just to build, like the bunkers, and also the higher ones are from the same tiles. So, and can also use some of the street tiles in there to get there, or just to create streets, bottom spaces for buildings. It's the only thing I haven't figured out yet, if it's worth magnetizing them. to stay more flexible because they are rather thin. So the usual, you would need to have those cubic larger magnets to be into the corners to get it that way. But this is something I have to try later on what's really working and what not, because it's it's kind of too small to be in that regard.
Yeah, I think I'll skip that and just build them, because I know I had it for a long time, not with magnets, but with the thought of not gluing my dead zone terrain together, because I could change it up. And I mean, I think I changed the terrain once in 11 or 12 or so years that I have my stuff. I have still pictures from when I received my Kickstarter, and most of my buildings look like that, and just got a few things added. And that was the point where I just said, okay, I glue them now. I think they're like that for 7 or 8 years. I'm not the person who's changing that, so I think I will just learn from that and just build them as I like them. I've got a few sprues, I think, as my mini factory stretch goal, because I've got the core. I've bought the core STLs for the first 4 factions too, so I've got the milestones there. So if I have to bulk up a few more walls for the buildings, I'll probably print them in resin, and it will be good enough for me, I think so. Or I'll just get another box.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
but that's also, as I said, I have to play around with that first to get really
you can stay flexible to a point, because you can like build them up as a pyramid kind of thing. So you just stuck them onto of each other, and be careful when you're playing. But it's like having your basic geometric forms as cubes on the ground and things like that. That works as well. It's also something you could also use is to add in some foam parts you get from the hardware store as an underground, so to have them sitting on a rock and things like there to add to the buildings. That could be a possibility. Yeah, well, and also, of course, if you have a 3D printer, or let's get a little bit deeper into the 3D printing side of things, because Mantic has released the STLs via the Kickstarter, but just the reinforcement packs and the super heavies in those days, and now added the remaining models and terrain feature in a My Mini Factory campaign. The models should be available individually to purchase later this year, and early next year, the second half of the models. So the remaining 4 factions and stuff should be also available in a campaign. Well, of course, if you get the terrain from a mini factory and printing it, you have a lot more possibilities. And I have always seen people printing them in FDM. This is just fine, so it works very well for the terrain. And you also have, of course, the possibility to not just print the tiles out, but pre-assemble that in the slicer or in the 3D software and make your basic shapes, duplicate the tiles in to make your cubes and get much more flexible forms out there. I think only if you want to break stuff apart to make ruins or damaged buildings, it's still easier to go with the plastics.
Yeah.
I don't think. Do we have damaged buildings in the SSDLs yet?
I don't think so. Now that you're mentioning it, I haven't seen them, but I haven't looked that closely.
I also haven't looked through the files, so I haven't seen them in any of the previews, but I haven't looked through the files if there's anything in there.
There might be in the more gothic looking ones. I think there are a few tiles that are ruined ones, but I don't think that the Terran Crate, Shenzek Heptanas are up there. ruins. Could be something for the future. Who knows? We have the Mantic Vault. Could be
Yeah.
something they can add rather easily once they have a bit of capacity for that, and not that as much going on as they have right now.
Yeah, as
Because I
they
mean,
have
it's
always.
been a busy months here with Firefight, Dead Zone, Kings of War, Champions, Epic Warpath, Kings of War 4th edition, of course. It's a lot going on. So I think once the new year arrived, those things could be a
Yeah, I mean,
possibility.
if someone really want to get into that, I've just checked this, the Dead Zone models on My Mini Factory, they have the damaged or tiles available. So you could just purchase the Dead Zone terrain pack and then scale things down if you want to. Have a little bit carefully, because I think a single Warpath tile is made up of 4 individual Dead Zone tiles. So if you scale the Dead Zone ones down to the Epic size, you would need to get 4 of them together to have a size that is handleable on the table for Epic. And then, of course, if you already put things together in 3D, you can make your ruin or pre-assembled ruin or damaged building just to print it out as it is, then without further assembly needed. But this is the easiest 3D printing possibility now for damaged buildings until Mantic adds Epic scaled ones themselves. And everyone who has the plastics already, it's pretty easy to damage the building as they are. And I guess also if you are FDM printing the buildings, it would also be to just add battle damage and debris after the print out, like with a hot just going with a flame on there and things like that. Well, so 3D printing in general, I think the releasing also the core models was a little bit unexpected for the most people, because during the Kickstarter it was only said to be just the reinforcement and the core stays plastic. Then we got all models with Kickstarter bakers getting a discount to upgrade. Well, how do we feel about that? Do you think that it helps the game, or is it more a damage to retail that people won't purchase the plastics if they can get the STLs?
Personally, I think it was a smart move because it's open. I mean, Epic Warpath is a niche game, will be because of the scale alone. It's not something. It's complementary to Firefight and Dead Zone that are 28 millimeters. So I think opening up the game to a whole new community, and not only the wargamers who already play Mantic games and like buy the things anyway because they like the universe, they like the rules, but really to people who play a few other games. I mean, there are many, I think, tabletop games in different scales for 3D printing and digital PDF rules and so on. So having new people recruited into Mantic's universe, I think, is a really good idea. I was also really surprised that they released the core units too. I think a few, but I haven't seen that many. Also felt a bit like betrayed because it was said that they won't be released as STLs on the campaign, and maybe they bought more plastic boxes than they would have. But on the other hand, Mantic clearly said, okay, they had enough funding through the Kickstarter for those plastic sprues, and then they went, okay, we want really those other crowds to enjoy the game, and we make it able. And I think for me, buying for £5 the STLs per faction is a great deal. That's less than €6 per faction.
That's a no-brainer.
That really was a no-brainer for me, and I will do that the same when I think in January around. that they will drop the other 4 factions. Also the GCPS, which I'm looking forward to, because I only can field 3 Marine units right now, and I want my first list has 4 in them, so then I will be able to print. I don't have to buy like a second complete box, and I just be able to print a few things. So having a printer is really good when you're playing Epic Warpath, because you can get the things you want. I really like how they did it, because now it's much easier to get a few things. More people are involved.
I mean, the game now has, I think, everything released in both forms. So you can go full digital, print everything on your own, or you can buy everything in physical form. So it's whatever you like more. If someone doesn't want to print, it's easy going. And I've already seen some people printing at least the tanks in FDM as well. So if you don't mind the lesser details, don't have a resin printer, and just want to game and use the models more as token anyway, this is an option as well. So we don't necessarily need a 3D printer to do that. And it's also interesting. So I think the only missing part now that we should see early next year is their print on demand service, how this works out. To really have to see what they offer on the printed parts, because like we have seen that very small or some of the parts of the resin reinforcement are printed already. So
and they are great quality. So those are really, really good prints.
But the question is then if the Mantic still really want to ship printed models around the world, or if they can get a local distribution on printing them for them. So this is
I think the idea was to have local distributors for that, so you don't have to pay for customs and those shipping, because if it's printed, I mean, it's like contradiction. You have something that you can print anywhere you want, and then you print it again only in England, in Nottingham, ship it then from there. That's that doesn't really make sense. So I think that's also why it's taking a bit longer, and they're really going through the options and getting in contact, and legal things following that for sure.
I mean, main problem is quality control, because if you need partners you can trust, so that they put out the right quality, and I think so this is the only hurdle I can see when you have printers all over the world, that you need the quality control on them. So it's
and I think that's also why it's taking time. It's not like they are selling licenses on My Mini Factory, where they say, okay, you buy the license and you can print anything for us, but to have really reliable hubs in Europe, in the US, maybe in Australia, New Zealand, in the UK, and so on. Hopefully also something in Asia. So it's all over the world, hopefully, and have them, your reliable partners where you really know you get good stuff. And I think, I mean, with Epic Warpath, having options to print things, and also the reinforcements being printed, would help Mantic, so they don't have to print them themselves and then ship them around. But it will also help for other games, because we have many things now digital for other games, where people without printers feel a bit, left behind. And Epic Warpath could be the one game where they went full on digital, a bit like Armada later then. So they're really embracing it, and I think that helps every other game that Mantic produces too.
Yeah, so this I guess this will also be more of a testing ground for future releases. Like if Epic Warpath works well, they can solve the problems there. If anyone's a core, they can search for the partners, see how things work out, how is the interest in growing the game, and also how this works with retail and partners. Because one thing is, if you go digital, is always how this works out with retailers, because Mantic as a company has to think about them as well, because who is going to stock Epic Warpath if you this is a 3D printing main hobby as well, and people, or a lot of shops who have playing spaces, gaming tables want to have a physical product on that they can sell and not just the gaming space.
Yep.
So this works good together. So we have to see how these things work out. And it's also planned. So at least the second wave. So with the Kickstarter, we have got 2 waves of models. With the first is hitting retail now. The second wave of models with the remaining 4 factions will be a beginning of next year, I think January, February. And then we have already seen there are things in the rulebook already of units that are not yet released.
I
So
think
at
there's
least there's
only a single one, and
I have
I've
2 units I have seen
two. Okay.
that also 2 units from 2 different factions that I have
Mhm.
seen that don't have really models yet. So we
Ah,
may get a third wave for sure to
yeah.
just get everything out.
I think it was also confirmed that there were a few things that were play tested already during the first play test, and by mistake, some units were
Made
left
it into the
in the
book.
rule book or made it into the rule book. Yeah, but I think it's a good sign that they were tested from the beginning, so we know
Yeah.
from a balance perspective, balance point, that's good that they were thought of in advance. I think it's also a good thing that we know and that it was like confirmed by now that there will be things coming after every faction is out there, that the factions will get fleshed out a bit more.
Mm.
The game isn't done now. There are always rumors. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
there are that more factions will be coming maybe in the future and so on. I mean, it depends how well Warpath will be doing, and I mean there are enough other factions you could do, and or even units for the
Yeah. I
existing
mean, there's
factions that we have in Firefight or Dead Zone
obviously.
and
Yeah.
aren't in here.
I mean, there are now the options because we have now physical and digital the game in. If the game works well enough,
Mhm.
Mantic is putting the money down for more plastics, of course. Or I would guess that way. If the game is like a medium size doing or slowly growing, just putting another faction out digitally that is then available as print and demand for those who want physical
Yeah.
is also a good option in there. So we can have the more niche factions as digital only, like a Mason Labs upgrade, because it just really only so the army list basically would be just a mix between Plague and GCPS with 1 or
Yeah.
2 special units that are Mason Labs exclusive. Just release this one as digital and print on demand, and you have another faction in there. Uh, and also some of the more niche factions could be digital first to see how well they are received with the public and then going physical. So there are now different options how this is going to proceed, but I expect at least a third wave to be seen next year, and then maybe a fourth wave of releases mid or end next year coming
Mhm.
go together. So that's definitely something to be expected, and that keeps the game alive so on into the future. Okay, so 3D printing in general. Any issues with the files on your side? Because I've had some, how to
Mm.
say, as far as I know, the files are still made as they were for the resin casting. So some of the larger models are split into different parts that are not necessarily for the 3D printing process. So you just reassemble them in the slicer, or did you print them individually out and assemble them afterwards?
I just printed them with their supported versions. They printed well, and then there are a few parts that I glued together. I mean, I've glued together so many miniatures in my life. I don't really mind. I mean, it's not like the best part of the hobby for me or the most engaging one, and it takes a bit of time, but it's not. I mean, the supports go. You can remove the supports really easily, and a Wolverine tank is 4 parts: the main hull, left tracks, right tracks, and the turret, either the Wolverine APC turret or the main battle tank turret. And that's something it's a few seconds because it's chunky, it's no problem. The infantry models are all one piece anyway. And something like the bigger mech took some time. I don't have the printed one, but the cast one, but it's like the same pieces. But I won't be gluing that thing 3 or 4 times because it's super heavy. So personally, I don't mind it. For those who are really 3D printing cracks who really enjoy the 3D printing part, for me it's more a tool, and I like to use it. But I don't mind assembling them in person. I get some good Mantic Universe podcasts on there, and and build my minis in the meantime. And so I think I'm faster building them in person than pre-building. If you print more, doing it once on your software is less time consuming. But for me, it's not worth it. I have no problem.
Yeah.
There were a few problems with, or maybe there are still with some files, scaling issues here and there, and it got a bit messy, I think, around my mini factory campaign because it's a digital only release, and then the files aren't working perfectly. I think that was a bit unfortunate. And again, in a time where Mantic has many things to do, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of troubleshooting. That's unfortunate.
It's a little bit tricky on their side because how to say Mantic is still new to that side of the business, while the 3D printing market in general is highly competitive and with a lot of things going on, a lot of companies out there doing their stuff high qualities. So this is like the new problems. It's
I remember a time a few years ago where pre-supported files were just slowly coming into the hobby, because where many said, well, you have different printers, you have to support them yourself as part of the hobby and so on. And now we have a community. When you start 3D printing, it's high quality. It's also a high quality of not only the sculpts, but also how they are released, that everything works, and you also want that. And if Mantic didn't really deliver that, I can see that the 3D printing crowd, not the Mantic fans, but the 3D printing crowd, the new ones who got in there, wanted like a perfect product from the beginning, which is reasonable too. But I think it will get better in time, and maybe they need a few more people, or having the resources.
They are still learning, so we know they try to improve and learn on mistakes. So it's not like this is what it is and it won't change over time. So they are still learning and things like that. It's also I remember early on when Mantic released the first 3D models on the wall, they didn't had any pre-supported on there because they were, how to say, on an outdated point of view, because it said everyone's going to pre-support use supports anyway, because people use supports as they print them and tile them into their own printers and setting, while the market already have moved on further, that pre-supports or ready to print files are now the standard. So they have improved on that one and learned, and now we should think they have now pre-supported for everything. So it's like,
and I think it's also important to say these things, and because obviously I'm a Mantic fan, or else I wouldn't be here, or even working as the RC for Dead Zone, or playing so many games and so on. So obviously I like them. And I might be a bit of a fanboy here and there, but on the other hand, I'm also quick to judge things that don't work, because as many people have also pointed out, they have to improve. and you have to say those things. But on the other hand, Mantic usually listens, and they go forward with that.
If you say things in a reasonable, nice way, they listen.
And that's the point. Yeah, you don't go in there trashing and everything is crap and so on. I mean, I'm also in a position where I say I'm just waiting. I haven't printed any of the core units yet that I got through my mini factory campaign or the vault, because I'm just waiting for everything to be updated, but I'm not in a hurry. I have my plastic crack here. I have my resin things here. I have them. I'm looking there because I have all the plastics primed but not painted. So I'm not really in a hurry there. So I'm speaking from a position, like a luxurious position. If you're just going in there,
this is that. If someone just purchased the my mini factory packages and wanted printed right away, and files were in the wrong size or some missing parts or parts being wrong, this is annoying as hell. So this is understanding for us that we have. When you already have the plastic models, and you just then I just wait and build the plastics first before I start printing. You see things a little bit different in there. And what I've seen now, they are on version 5 already with the update, so this is going reasonably fast. And I think the mistakes. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, also you have to keep in mind the really printing community that they want to target there. And Ronnie said that in a few interviews many times. They expect I buy a file, I download that file 2 minutes later, put it in my slicer, support it or use pre-supports, whatever, print it right away, and the next day I have everything there, I clean it, and I can play, on the same day or day after. You can buy that on a Thursday and play on the weekend already. Not painted, obviously, but and that's something those people know and value about 3D printing. No waiting times. You can do it in in your speed. And if that doesn't work, it's obvious that they will point that out or see it as a bigger problem than me, who is like 3D printing is auxiliary to my usual hobby. It's an extra. I mean, it's gotten more and more, obviously, and I'm looking around and it's gotten really more. So, but for me, I have a different mindset than those who say, okay, I only play and print my miniatures.
Yeah,
different
I mean,
angles.
it's like how to say a mistake was, or I think that the main mistake was that Mantic is still approaching things from a hobby side, because all of those people there are still hobbyists first. They're not like, you don't have their professional stuff going in there. So they do 3D printing because one of their guys is 3D printing his stuff, and so he put that as a company side of things, and started to offer or pushing that forward for Mantic to offer things like that. And so they still have a hobby mindset in there. So if someone is like, releasing models in a different scale isn't a problem, because you just adjust this size in the slicer and scale it up or down as you need it, and print it out. But this is like, of course, from a hobby side of things, this is how things have been done a long time. This is how a lot of people still do their things, because if someone wants their vehicles or super heavies a little bit larger, they just scale them up and print them in that regard. No problem in that. But from a more professional point of view, like how a lot of companies are still doing it, you want to have your ready-to-use items. You don't want to look up what scale you need to have, how do you need to adjust them, or if those are in the right scale before you print them. This is things like, you want this have to. We are now in a thing that the printers themselves aren't on that point yet, but most of the files are, that you have them ready to use and just push the button.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as we already said at the beginning, it will get better. They will get a better routine already, and pushing it. It's the third campaign now. We had Armada, we had Vanguard, and now Epic Warpath as the first real new game getting this treatment. I think it's a good step, and there are, issues along the path, but I think it's a reasonable approach.
And then we'll see. Let's look a little bit into the design of things, because we got a lot of different and new designs that weren't there in Warpath before. Let's like so for everyone listening to this on Spotify or as a podcast audio, pictures of those are taken from the Mantic website. You should go when you go on under Epic Warpath on the shop, and think the tab is called. Let me just confirm that. What is Epic Warpath? So most pictures that we use are from there, and then taken from the different shop sites. So follow us on the Mantic website. If you're watching that on YouTube, you should see the pictures now.
And we're trying to also talk about it in a reasonable way where you can, understand what we're talking about without having to have the picture in front of you.
I mean, one problem with in the past with Firefight or the 28mm version of Warpath was that the game is, how to say, not large enough to push the larger models and a reasonable amount through to make them worth doing. Like Mantic have seen, if the tanks, like a standard firefight army is usually 1 or 2 tanks, and then making plastics model for that is very expensive, and if we don't have selling them as on the bulk, it's not really worth doing, while making very expensive large resine models isn't really well received either.
Yeah, because they're also expensive. Not only, the material, you prefer plastic for bigger things, but it gets expensive quickly for the one who's buying the kit, not for on the production side.
Also on the production side, because
sorry, on the tooling. Sorry, on the tooling side, not on the production side per se. Yeah, on the tooling side, the tooling is
cheaper. I mean, that's tricky. It's not just expensive to buy; it's also expensive to produce if you have these low numbers and larger models. So we were a little bit limited. We had seen a lot of artworks for different vehicles in the previous books, also in the Dead Zone book, but never got really models in the larger scale. And now they have taken the chance to get really a lot of things out there and still keeping the design space. Like we have seen the Forge Fathers, they had these pre-designed tanks that were like part of the army early on, but then later added now that the super heavies, their hovercrafts, which blend really nice into the army. And expand on this, the enforcers have now more tanks, although they shouldn't using tanks, so some more like transport things. But we also already had how to say, not a tank released in Firefight, but a drone or a larger drone type for the Pathfinders that would be tank sized. So I guess this also fits somehow in, because the enforcer vehicles don't really look like your usual tanks. If you say, okay, those are gun drones in a tank size, that makes sense. It fits the army and the design.
Yeah, I think they made a really good point there. We have taken this picture with the Enforcers and the Forge Fathers because you can see some existing designs. You have the jet bikes, and you have a Sternhammer tank from the Forge Fathers, and some halter half tracks, and Iron Ancestors. They have a pretty unique design language. One is the jet bike and the fast and nimble on the Enforcer side, and the other one is the dwarven Forge Father type. And they took the designs, it made something new, but it's fitting the old design language. and it's enriching the Warpath background, because now we have more things. As you said, Enforcers didn't have tanks, and it was a bit also like by choice, because they said it doesn't fit the army or the faction theme. They are there to get in quickly, overwhelm the enemy, shock and awe tactics, and like old style main battle tanks on tracks don't fit. But with these Panther designs, or even the bigger Victors, they look sleek. They look like they can, get in there quickly. They fit the design of the Accuser and Interceptor, or the Flyers in general. So they look really modern and state of the art tech, opposed to the GCPS ones. Obviously, even the Lancer tank, the new hover tank for the GCPS, looks more archaic in a way, like you would expect a
I
battle
would say
tank to look.
traditional. It looks
Traditional, yeah.
Yeah, it looks really like a traditional main battle tank, despite it being a hover or an not hovercraft. How do you call it?
An anti-grav tank.
Anti-grav, because Hoover is the rule in the game. It's
Yeah.
but it's usually called anti-grav. So it's hovering on a very low distance above the ground, but it's like an anti-grav tank solution. So now I've put on the reinforcement picture. It's still just renders from the Mantic homepage. So, but the first printed models are still out there. So we have those the usual transporting flyers and fit in with the more heavy specialist tanks with the gun platform. I have to say, what I don't like about the Enforcer vehicles is that they have the symmetrical gun turrets. Like, I would have preferred if they would have only one weapon on one side and like sensors or something on the other side, and not those twin turret designs. So, but this is like a personal favor of mine to have this more in a different way. But this look also, so this fit into, so you clearly see like you have the standard vehicles that are transports and gun drones, and then you have the heavier ones. The design, it blends in quite well, and you clearly can spot that those are Enforcer tanks.
Yeah, and even the Victor looks like the Panther tank with added things on the sides if you're looking closely, which I also like that those are close together from a design perspective. And that's something where I think from a lore point, as some of you might know, I'm really into the lore also from the Warpath universe. And I think expanding the lore, even only by the units that are available and the roles that they're taking and how they look, is already great for the factions and for understanding what's special about them.
I mean, it's also we really now getting a larger universe in there, because previously we have really seen just a dead zone with just the teams and the terrain. Now firefight with a single tank or transporter in there, and now with Epic Wicked, you really can see how the faction things develop, and by knowing how the actual army of a faction look like, also the smaller games enrich in lore, because you now know what they're supposed to have in there. I mean, even if you just have this low res model and print it out as terrain for firefight in a larger scale, or as a battle damaged tank to put on the table, and you get so much more out of the universe that way, just by knowing how those things should look like and they exist. It's also like how we say, I'm now putting up a picture of the Forge Fathers anti-grav transports, which are again more of a traditional hovercraft transport or anti-grav transport.
As
as you expect them, but this is like they have a different design from their tanks, so not this how to say this facial or face design, like looking at a grim dwarf with beard or as a tank face, but they're also very fitting for the dwarves just in their functionality. They're like simplistic and functional designed.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, they are blocky. That's a sign of the Forgefather tech. But also they remind me of the newer transport that they got in Firefight, actually. The how are they called? The Knar assault tanks. They
Yeah,
have a different front, and they look a bit like the Knar assault tanks. So it's a transition from the design of the Sternhammer to the Knar, and then again to the dropship. And I mean,
yeah,
it's a ship, so it can look different than the main battle tank, and that's fine.
yeah, of
But
course.
they're still recognizable. If you see those models, those are obviously Forgefather ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the Warpath universe by itself isn't a static setting, but an ongoing one or a progressing one. So, of course, as campaigns evolve and things like that, we will see new technology and new models on the tables. Simply just as the timeline progresses and moves on, the factions in the universe learn from the wars and battles they fought and will improve on the technology and bring new things to the table. So this is like seeing a natural development and how things started and how factions evolve to improve and try to get key technology ahead of their opponents is also something nice to have in there and shown in those design process.
Yeah. And we have some old things that were mentioned a long time ago, like the Lancer battle tank for the
Yeah.
GCPS is an old thing. We have a super heavy for the Enforcers, which we had some, I think, sketches, but also artwork. So the Drakon Light Cruiser is something that is in the universe for quite some time, and now we can field it, and that's something I'm really looking forward to, because I like the design of the light cruiser, and it's one of the few starship designs that is really locked in the universe. That is has a few, I think, in the source book, maybe even a few more information about that. And so having it on the table, or seeing it on the table at least, is something I really enjoy at that point.
Mm. I mean, it's also, and the one faction, I mean, outside of the Nameless, obviously, they have a complete new design. So this is something that we may cover in future and go
Yeah,
into
that's
more
that's
details.
that's that's a whole
That's
episode
a whole
about the
episode.
nameless.
It's
Yeah,
about
that's
this is how they think this. But also the Marauders got a lot of new stuff because previously they were like an intermediate improvisation because we got the Wolverine battle tank for the Marauders at first, which isn't a Mantic model that came from Archon and was added in, and Epic Warpath now. So I put up the artwork of the Marauder tanks. With Epic Warpath now, we still have the Wolverine in there as for Marauder battle tank and also for GCPS, but also some new tank designs or transport designs that are much more, how to say, fit more the Marauder bot designs. And
hmm
this is something also interesting because Marauders are mercenaries in the GCPS. They get their technology from the humans manufacturing it. It is the design is adjusted to fit the Marauders and their style of engagement, but it's still a human design that they can buy or get outfitted with. And yet it's still, how to say, different from what we see from the other tanks.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the Hammer assault tanks that they got now, and before we had the Wolverine, which is also a human tank that they use, same as the Mules and the Hornets. So we only really had the GCPS vehicles that the Marauders use. But now we have human made, I think, yeah, as you said, a vehicle tank, which is produced for the needs of the marauders. So they have enough money, or some of them have enough money to have some corporations and to build them specifically for them, those vehicles. And they look like a bit like, or are inspired by the stuntbot, the walker type thing, which is one of their maybe classic designs for the faction, and which is in the lore an older design predating the Strider. But obviously the Marauders like the look of it and the functionality, and now have more vehicles, especially the hammer tanks, who look a bit like those old walkers, which they like, and they are, they are just working. They don't
Yeah.
have to be really pretty, but they are straightforward. They are to get into the fight, bringing some heavy guns, Hugh beamers, also one of the weapons you recognize if you're looking at a Marauder army, and then have this bit rounded design, and they look massive, and like that they can take quite a punch, and deliver their cargo. So
Yeah.
it's the first time we really see. I mean, it's on a massive epic scale. The Marauders are often seen as some mercenaries going into dead zones, but we know they are able and capable to fight on a bigger scale, also in firefight, but also from the stories. They are now in a position where some empire, if you want to call it that way, is building. Some bigger bands are working together. So having them produce vehicles to fight big wars and not only like minor engagements makes sense, and we see that here. So it's only a bit of a tank design and maybe a flyer design or a super heavy, but the implications are much bigger from a lore perspective, and that's really hyping me up. I'm not a big Marauder player, but I really like the background, and so bringing that forward through this design and through new units is something I'm really glad that they did it this way.
Yeah, I really like how things turn out with them, because, like you said, yeah, they are functional. But we also have the Forge Fathers who have their functional vehicles. But it's really going in a very different design, despite both going aiming for the same target. And how to say, I'm playing Marauders in Firefight, and obviously I would looking forward to see their tanks going big. And what we have now seen in the past was like Mantic added the mule to the vault to have, which is available as a plastic model, but now it's also a full digital one. So this could also be like a stopgap later on to have the new vehicles that we see in Epic added to Firefight as a vault purchase or SDL in a larger scale, with a little bit more details to print out and expand the game in that point. But also as well, if you're just playing Dead Zone on Marauders, using the Epic models, scale them up, print them in FDM, just adding as a terrain feature on the, is also already a nice thing to add. And you also could use parts of them or use the weapons to expand your Dead Zone armies.
Yeah, absolutely. I've played quite some games with three or four mules in the center, having like a caravan of mules, getting ambushed or something like that, and playing it that way, and having more vehicles from different factions, just spices things up. You don't always have to have the normal looking human things in there. So the more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. So in what are our big plans for the future? So obviously we are going to try to cover more Epic Warpath on the podcast. We're also going more into the rules in detail or some playing experience in one of our next episodes. Wanna start at things slow because just first paint everything and then only play with painted models because we don't want to disturb the dice gods in there.
Then everything dies quickly because it's newly painted. Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. It's like so first games are quick, so easy to report and obviously. So if you guys have any questions or want to see us covering any other topics, please leave a comment. Join us on Facebook. Leave something as comment on YouTube, Spotify, on our Discord. And also a quick shout out on the communities. There is the Epic Warpath Fanatics group on Facebook that is very active. We have a Warpath subreddit. This is our Warpath or our Mantic. To join, there is the Mantic fans Discord that is also a very active Epic Warpath section, and the original Epic Warpath Discord that was used for the early playtesting and is now open to join for everyone. So there, have I missed anything? Don't think so. Should be.
No, I think it's fine. I mean,
So
we have our
these are
Mantic
currently
Universe
the
Discord,
yeah
of course.
obviously our Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these are the most active communities at the moment. So join any of them, see the pictures, share your ideas, share your painted armies, your playing experience, and question ask or what you want or want to see from Mantic games in future. Yeah. Anything else we have missed?
I mean, plenty. I mean, there's so much to talk about. I think the idea was to give a few, talking points maybe about the design language,
Yeah.
about our projects, about our ideas and the things we got from the community maybe and we read and have seen. So it's just a starting point, and we can hopefully, inspire you to think about those things, or maybe start an army, look at the game without even talking about a single rule, I think. So, but that
Yeah.
wasn't really the space now. We can go into
Yeah.
detail about the rules a bit more and how it plays if you want to. We can look a bit more in depth at maybe some factions and, those things we said about the design space. Nameless, especially, I think, are something many people were really hyped for, because we only have, a few monopose miniatures from Star Saga and a few extras from that zone. Nothing for Firefight, and now we have so many new things and creatures. That's also something we could go into detail about the design. About,
I mean, we definitely will. Just
the
question is
ideas.
just
Yeah,
if sooner or
yeah.
later. So this is like
Yeah,
so please
I
just
guess so. So
so
that could
whatever
be
the community demands in going first, that we will cover first. So if you want to hear more about the rules first, then we go into the rules. If you want to have faction reviews, obviously we will do those. And if you want to hear all about the Nameless, their background, and the details about the design and the models we know and what are new, just let us know in the comments, and we will do it.
And maybe from a lore perspective, the universe is evolving, and we have a background section in the rule book, which is also really, really interesting. And that's maybe something for the lore side of the Warpath universe, where we could see how things are evolving through the Epic Warpath rulebook. And also a shout out to the short story compilation. I've read the first 2 short stories now, which I really, really enjoyed. I was a bit, I don't want to say disappointed from our host from That's on the podcast. He didn't bring in any reps, but it's Epic Warpath. No reps there. The story was great though, and I really enjoyed it.
Maybe later.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
reps is hard,
yeah.
but we will see. Maybe the background will be evolving in a way that reps make sense
I mean, it's
in
like
bigger scale, big battles. I personally hope
things
so.
can happen.
Yeah.
Rebellion just started. So how much is involved? Maybe we see this coming in the next year,
Yeah.
or how to say how the game timeline evolves. Like 10-year jumps in the game can do a lot, and maybe they have
Yeah.
covered the planet, and campaign starts to rise or not. So this there.
So we have it's all interlinked, and we will try to cover as many fun things as we can. As I said, obviously, as part of the Epic Warpath podcast, maybe even on the lore podcast if it's really really lore heavy. But I think it's so connected, and I mean it's a big universe, and it's only getting fleshed out. We have the re-release of First Strike, the novel, which I've already read a few years ago, but now reread and with a new novella. If you like that, if you like the look of Epic Warpath, get into the lore. There's quite a bit there. It's still really really many stories to read. Hopefully many more to come, and things like this will just help the universe as a whole.
Yeah. Okay, so then I will stop cosplaying as a Bond villain because I have again the cat sitting in front of me and or the white cat sitting in front of me doing my thing.
My cat is lying on my lap for I think
Yeah.
the last 45 minutes. So
yeah, with the big sleeper. So we were both so just imagine that two Bond villains are talking about Epic Warpath and petting their cats in the wild. So okay,
and I mean we have our German accents on top of that, so that's everything
that
a
fits
good villain
perfectly well.
needs.
So it's so need to rewatch Goldfinger again, and then it's to cover all cliches. So, dear listener, I hope you had fun, got all the information you want, and get the hype going. And I wish you a good day, night, or morning whenever you are listening. And goodbye.
Bye bye.